Did you just say an inappropriate word?
Hello.
Wow, Mike.
Why
Yeah.
did that slip through?
I don't know. Probably it literally might the podcast might start with ass, which would be really funny.
That'd be awesome.
I'll have to like
Especially on
clip
the
that out and
Whose ass are we
make it
talking
into like a
about?
dubstep song or something. Maybe I can send it over to Niels, and Niels can make it into he could like incorporate it into his DJing. That'd be really
There
fun.
you go.
Mike
That'd
Panozzo
be-
just swearing.
well, it's
It's
the
a common
Panozzo
theme at home.
remix. Who knew Mike was
Ass,
on
ass,
Instagram?
ass,
By the way,
ass,
I didn't
ass,
know Mike was
yeah,
on
right?
Instagram.
I've been on Instagram since 2005, bro.
Are you on
Really?
Were you on
Yeah.
Threads yet? You
I
on
was on
Threads yet?
Instagram.
Mike?
I was on Instagram before you had your first phone.
Wow. What was your first phone like, Mike? Was it the big one?
No, I didn't have a bag phone.
No,
No, my first phone was I didn't get
the,
one until they had the small
the Nokia.
Ericsson.
I
You're-
had a Nokia. That was my first phone.
You're playing Snake on that bad
Hey,
boy.
you don't hate on Snake, man.
I
Snake
had the,
was the,
the
Yeah.
little
Snake is the
plug.
top 10 game of all time.
I had a little plug-in on the top, to take a picture because they didn't have cameras in the phones then.
I remember how reliable my phone was. I mean, I love that thing, man.
Yeah, my dad had his bag phone till about 2013.
Is that right?
I'm telling you, man.
Did it work?
Snake is a top 10 game of all time. Don't even hate on it.
Well, it was pretty solid. Got me in a lot of trouble at work during those days too.
So
What got me in a lot of trouble in middle school.
Yeah.
I'm a little younger.
Yeah.
So as long as we're talking about voting today, I'd like for people online to vote about whether they're tired of seeing me after the next 2 days.
Mike, I don't think you want to see those results, Mike, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't look good for me.
I think that you are becoming quickly the most popular face on streams, Mike.
I don't know about popular, most common.
You're like the
but I've
you're
always
like
said I'm a podcast slut.
you're like
It reminds me Mike's on fire today. It reminds me of like I watched wrestling in the 90s, and there was one week in particular where like Rick Rude was on both Monday Night Raw and WCW at the same time. So it was like 7:00 and he's on both shows. That was Mike yesterday.
Well, listen, if you're comparing me to someone from WWE, I'm all in.
I never
You got the same physique.
That's right.
I never expected was it WWE then, or was it WWF then?
It was F back then. Yeah, it was.
So I was not expecting to have a WWF reference today. That's fun.
Listen, those wrestling days were great, man. You want to talk about some drama? Pool needs some WWF in its life. Trust me, it needs some.
Listen, you don't want to know. You don't want to know who the wrestlers were when I was growing up. All right,
Ric Flair, baby.
Dick the Bruiser and Mad Dog Vachon and Andre the Giant.
Did they have TV back then, Mike?
They did.
It
was black and white.
Black and white. It was black and white.
But they were still
4
throwing
channels.
each other out of rings.
Look, man, I grew up it was before my time, but my favorite shows as a kid, and even still now, were I Love Lucy was number 1, and I think number 2 was Three's Company. That wasn't in black and white, but I still love Three's Company. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
I Love Lucy.
I love Lucy.
I go with I Love Lucy,
Yeah,
but you coming clean on Three's Company is kind of a bold move, buddy.
Oh, Three's Company was the best, man. I like that physical comedy. I do, man. And they were epic, man. So both of them.
Did you like Don Knotts better or Norman Fell?
Don Knotts for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Don Knotts. But I was like, I remember one of my favorite movies as a kid was The Shakiest Gun in the West. I don't know if you remember that, Mike.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I grew up with The Shakiest Gun in the West.
Great movie. Yeah,
better than Incredible Mr. Limpet.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Look at Nate. Nate looks like someone just stole his dog.
Yeah.
I knew I was young, but I didn't realize I was this young.
No,
I'm an old. I'm like Chua. Like Chua said the other day, I'm an old soul.
Old soul.
So yeah, for sure. So
yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Where do we go from this? Do we even talk pool?
Roller derby, man. Roller derby. You got to go.
I'll tell you what. Roller derby. I'm telling you what.
When I was a kid, roller derby was the nuts.
Roller derby was
them
fun,
girls
man.
on roller derby. I don't know. I've seen some roller derby locally. That got some.
Joni Weston, the original.
I'll tell you what.
Blonde bomber roller derby queen. You have to look her up. Joni Weston.
There's some roller derby women that could probably pick you up and just break you in half, Mike. Both of you.
Both of us,
Please.
Mike. You talking
Yeah,
about
both
both
of
of us?
you.
Yeah, please.
One in each hand.
Mike said with the martini in his hand as that
Yeah,
happens.
go ahead, grab me, baby.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
For something like that, you probably need an old fashioned. It just seemed
Yes.
that's a proper
This seems
pairing
like
for getting
this
broken
really
in
does
half.
seem like a natural segue into talking about the BCA Hall of Fame.
I don't know how we got here, boys. I
Yeah,
don't know how we got here.
either.
Yeah.
I Love Lucy, I think, was the gateway.
Yeah.
Uh,
This is
You
worse
know,
top. We've had plenty of worse topics than I Love Lucy. Trust me,
no,
plenty of worse.
Bob a little baby.
Yeah, that probably might. That might not even take top 5. Especially when you got Telfer around, man. I'm telling you, you get that clown around, and you just man, things go weird fast.
Yeah, they do.
Where is Jimmy? Bring him on.
I don't know where he is.
I
Thinks
miss
he's better
busting
than
his
us.
balls.
He misses being busted.
Yeah,
Gets him
We gotta
all
make-
goofy.
we got to make time.
All right. Let's transition into we are going to be talking about the BCA Hall of Fame today. All 3 of us have a vote. Of course, Mike is the founder and the absolute champion of bringing Mike and Molina Mike on to this silliness. But Mike, I guess bring us up to speed with where we are at.
Well, I think one of the interesting things about us 3 getting together is that yesterday there was a lot. Everybody had shows yesterday about Niels getting into the Hall of Fame. And there was discussion about, who else was on the ballot a little bit and how great it is for being in the Hall of Fame. But I think it's an interesting topic to talk about in terms of what the Hall of Fame is, why it's important, how it's voted on, how you get on the ballot, things like that, because there's always questions when we have the Hall of Fame discussions. People are saying, why isn't so-and-so in the Hall of Fame? Or how do you get into the Hall of Fame, and what are the credentials and things like that? So, it's a good opportunity to just kind of educate people a little bit on how it all works, how it all comes together. Just for a little history lesson, the Hall of Fame in the old days, the Hall of Fame really didn't start until the late 60s. The Billiard Congress of America decided it needed a Hall of Fame. And went ahead and started one. And back then, the board of directors essentially sat in a room and decided who was going to get into the Hall of Fame. So it'd be 6 industry guys sitting in a room, and they'd say, well, it's our first Hall of Fame. We got to put in Moscone and Greenleaf and, all these legends who had, were either long dead or their careers had been over.
Makes sense.
Later on, it turned into a little more of, they allowed the voting members of the association to have a vote. And where that went sideways was, to be a voting member, you had to be a voting member of the association to exhibit in the trade show. So as the trade show grew, and they had all these exhibitors who were now in spas and in fireplaces and outdoor furniture, they all had
Welcome
a
to the
vote.
pool world.
They all had a vote in the Hall of Fame. And a lot of them didn't vote because they didn't know, a pool player from anybody else on the street. But what it also did was it kind of turned it into a little more of a popularity contest, who the players were that these voters used to see on the trade show floor, who was endorsed by one company or another. It had very little to do with it. So at that point, when we organized the United States Billiard Media Association, we petitioned the BCA to let us take, which is the Media Association is a group of people like yourselves and me and
Don't include me in that mix. I barely got in this year.
Well,
surprisingly.
it's people who cover the sport and have a good idea and some objectivity of who the players are and what constitutes a great player, credential-wise.
The criteria got watered down a little bit this year, Mike.
And but that was still better than having people who exhibit at the trade show vote on Hall of Fame, right? So we established we got the BCA to allow the media group, which was about 30 people, to be the essential caretakers of the Hall of Fame. And additionally, living Hall of Famers get a vote. Once the ballot is put together, the USBMA kind of structures the ballot that decides who might be in meritorious service, who might be in for veteran players, things like that. Then when the ballot gets sent out, living Hall of Famers also get a vote. And then there's a group of people that we've always referred to as friends of the game, who might be promoters or historians or someone who wouldn't be considered media, but aren't really, aren't Hall of Famers either. So there's people like that. So all together, there's about 60 voters, right? And we send out the ballot, and
which is Robert's question.
Yeah, so there's roughly 60 voters. There's about 30 from the Media Association, 6 from Friends of the Game, and then 24 living Hall of Famers or thereabouts. So you're at about 60. And then we send out the ballots. And it's strictly a matter of, in the greatest player category, the player who gets the most votes is elected. And as we explained yesterday, you can vote as a voter. You can vote for, if there's 10 people on the ballot and you think that all 10 deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, you can vote for all 10. And therefore, each of those players has one vote. Now, the next person votes for just one person, not the other 9. Now it's 2 to 1, that, and it goes kind of that way. So it's strictly in numbers. It's similar to the Baseball Hall of Fame. When baseball players on the ballot goes out to the writers, and there might be 24 players on the ballot, and the writers can pick as many or as few as they want. Anybody who exceeds X percentage of votes gets into the Hall of Fame. Oh. So they could have a year where no one gets into the Hall of Fame if no one exceeds 70% of the vote.
The threshold, yeah.
Right. So in the BCA Hall of Fame, we want to put someone in, a great player in every year. So the biggest vote getter gets in, even if they were only at, say, 55%. Which rarely, if ever, happened. But so that's kind of the structure. As far as meritorious service and veteran players who, have either been deceased for a million years or who were on the ballot until they were 60 and didn't get elected, and they kind of drop off the ballot. There's a committee that reviews those each year and makes recommendations to the whole board as to whether these people should be put forth for this, a vote for election. So that's how that works. And we try to do it every other year. 1 year meritorious service, 1 year veteran players. So this year the committee looked at veteran players who had not been voted in the past or who've been deceased for 30, 50, 60 years, and didn't really come across anybody that they felt was deserving. So that's why there was only a greatest player category this year, and Niels was the biggest vote getter. Does that all make sense?
It does, yeah. Hopefully we don't get kicked out by ruffling feathers. And if I say we, I mean me.
No, there's no ruffling feathers. I mean, you read about it every year with baseball writers. I mean, they'll write articles about who they're voting for and who they're not voting for and why. And they're going to say, "Listen, this guy was a cheater. I'll never vote for him."
Give me the steroid era opinion then.
I'm sorry.
Give me the steroid era opinion.
My personal opinion is steroid era. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of it. I don't like guys who blew up 6 sizes in 2 years and they hit 500 home runs. It doesn't do anything for me. So there's
Barry Bonds. I hate that argument. Like Barry Bonds is a Hall of Famer before steroids, and
then why did he use steroids? So then at that point he cheated. Then at that point, if you're talking about integrity of the game, and you spoke yesterday, Nate, about there's people you weigh in there and how good they are as a person. All right, so someone who cheated at the game to get better than his opponents, does he still stay on your list? I don't care if he was a Hall of Famer before that or not.
Yeah, well, I mean, Barry Bonds was a Hall of Famer absolutely before he even started steroids. With that being said,
sure. I'd have to try to see where he was in his career when he started.
It wasn't close. It wasn't close. He was He had 2 Hall of Fame careers.
That summer of Sammy and Mark had me watching,
oh my goodness,
National League Baseball.
It was great, compelling stuff, but it was 2 cheaters.
Well, Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire are borderline Hall of Fame. Well, I shouldn't say borderline Hall of Famers. They're Hall of Famers with. I mean, if you just remove steroids completely, they were Hall of Fame careers. But neither of
Sammy
them
Sosa?
were Hall of.
I would know. Mark McGwire, maybe. Sammy Sosa, I'm on the fence.
Well, okay. Sammy Sosa's borderline, we'll say. And neither one of them were Hall of Famers before steroids. Very possible.
I don't know.
Anyways, we don't want to get too far into baseball because we'll be here the rest of the day.
Yeah, that's true.
And we've already got a Pete Rose comment. I knew that was coming.
Well, Pete Rose might be the greatest baseball player ever. Could make an argument. He's the greatest.
For sure should be in the Hall of Fame.
One of the greatest
$1,000,000% should
hitters
be in the Hall
ever.
of
That's for
Fame.
damn sure. Yeah. Anyways,
Plus,
so
if we
that's
start
the
going down
background.
that
That's
list
the
when it comes to
background on
integrity, it may not get a
BCA.
little sticky.
Yeah, that's the background on the BCA Hall of Fame in terms of voting, who votes, how we get a player in, things like that. And anybody has any questions regarding that, feel free to fire them in. That's what we're here for today.
Yeah, absolutely. I will be monitoring the comments. I will get them in if they're good enough questions. Let's start on. I think a good place to naturally start, Mike, and you're the newbie, so why don't we? Molina Mike, you're the newbie, so why don't we start with you? This was your first time voting. How did you take into account the players on the ballot, and how did you start kind of deciding whether or not a player was worthy?
Well, it was a really big honor because I'm big on like tradition and titles and things like this. I feel like this like cements and solidifies careers and is super important to like just giving us respect, and maybe not even on the outside but just within the industry, you know what I mean, of just guys should be recognized like this, and I feel like it's an honor and a privilege to be able to vote. So the deadline kind of got away from me, but thanks to Mike for giving me a kick in the pants. When it comes to it, when it came to, I had a brief foundation of the qualifications in order to be on there. As far as how these names got there to my email, that I wasn't too sure about. To be honest, some of the names I was surprised that they weren't Hall of Famers. So from my own history, and I'd imagine the average fan needs to know who's in there, maybe who isn't in there, by default. So I feel like it'd be good, just like education of just letting people know, you know what I mean, and but I feel like that can be a slippery slope, because then you can open up for a lot more conversations and criticism and things like that, and that's perfectly fair, to be had. But yeah, I mean, I forgot how many names were on there, like maybe like 6-ish, 7-ish, somewhere on there. Mike, is that right?
There
Two,
were
three,
this year, there
4,
were
5, 6, 7, 8,
9.
8.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
8?
8?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
9. I did
Yeah,
this.
9.
Some for me were no brainers on one end, some for me were no brainers on the other end, if that makes sense to you guys. Some I didn't even give any kind of thought or consideration to, where others, like I initially I thought it was only allowed to be one. Then I realized we can do more than one, and then it was like, okay, this is serious stuff, because I want to really like. And then I start looking at the accomplishments, right, and how much you're gonna personally weight those. Um, I I'm of the opinion, I felt like there should be more than one allowed. I can see the argument for the other side, but that's just how I feel. And I voted for more than one, but Niels was on that short list of people that I did vote for. So,
Well, you can have more than one if both players exceed 75%, are named on 75% or more of the ballots. So that's only happened once, and that was, I think it was 14 or 13, somewhere in there, when Johnny Archer and Allison Fisher were on the ballot for the first time, and both of them just crushed everyone's ballots. So that's the only time that's ever happened, but you can have two voted in the same year.
well, I mean, I watched the show yesterday, and you guys made light of the fact that next year, along with Shane, who's a first ballot no brainer, will for sure get in. There's other names like Carlo and Ga-Young Kim who are going to be on there, who are going to have pretty serious and weighted arguments in their own right. If you take away like the Shane effect, and he's kind of in a class of his own, I get it, but that's going to make for a pretty interesting vote. And that's something, like, for me, that I'm really going to be looking forward to seeing how it shakes out,
Yeah.
So
I think we should give that a proper discussion later on, maybe when we preview next year. I guess going on, I wouldn't mind expanding. So that, I guess, that we asked you what you look for in, as far as voting, this being your first year. I don't know if, I guess I said that earlier. This was your first year voting in the Hall of Fame. This was my second year voting in the Hall of Fame. And I kind of the way that I look at my votes, I spoke with Mike quite a bit last year, Mike Panozzo last year, and I kind of got a gauge for how I felt the Hall of Fame had went for the last 30, 40, 50 years. And Mike, you said this quite often, that this is one of the hardest, if not maybe the hardest Hall of Fame to get into of any sport out there for any of the Hall of Fames. You stand behind that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just strictly a matter of numbers. I mean, you're looking at a sport that, is over 100 years old in terms of, serious competitive play. There's 80 total people in the Hall of Fame, and only about 60 of them are players. So, so yeah, that to me would indicate that
there's 60 NBA players that go in every year.
well, but team sports are a little bit different, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
But still, and I think that's one of the things I like most about the Billiard Hall of Fame is that, you can be a great player and not get in. And there should be a differentiation between a great player and, one of the greatest players ever. There should, to me, I like that there's a distinction, and I like that not everybody who won a tournament gets in, because it makes it that much more special. And I think it increases the credibility of the Hall of Fame to people outside the industry who would look at our Hall of Fame and take a deeper look into it and see that they just didn't put everybody in who everybody liked.
Yeah. So when I started looking at the Hall of Fame last year and who I was going to vote for full disclosure, last year I voted for 2 players. This year I voted for 1, and we'll talk about who that is later on. I wanted to live up to the honor that I felt the Hall of Fame has been historically, which is very difficult to get into, and you must be very much worthy, right? It shouldn't be a question as to whether or not you're worthy of being in there. When you look at the people that are in there, the people who have gotten inducted in the last few years, historically, there's been I don't think you could look there and say, like, this person is questionable, right? I mean, everybody that's in there is a lock to be in there. So when I look at the ballot, I look at who do I think is an absolute lock to get in there. And when I looked at the ballot and I decided who was going to get in, that's the criteria that I looked at. So generally speaking, when I'm looking at this, I want to see 3 absolute dead major titles, meaning U.S. Opens, World Championships, the biggest events, China Open, stuff like that, where I see at least 2 to 3 of those, and then a nice career outside of that. And that is kind of how I look at the criteria for who I start to look at. So, Mike, you've been voting for a while. How do you? A while.
Long while.
How do you look at your criteria when you're looking at these ballots?
Not too dissimilar from the way you just described it. I've got I refer to them yesterday as these silos. I've got my A list, my A, category, and that's world titles, U.S. Opens, really big international open. It has to be an open tournament, and then my B, category is the big, invitational type events that are great titles to have, but, World Pool Masters, World Cup of Pool, Moscone Cup appearances, things like that, right? And regular tour titles that had really strong fields, right? And then my C category is, the 6 million regional titles and bar table tournaments that everybody's won that had, 10 good players and 45 locals, that type of thing. And to me, I look at a lot of players and I say, what, they really have that B category filled up, but they're a little shy on the A category. Okay. That was world titles, the U.S. Open, that type of thing. And to me, that's what separates the great players from the Hall of Famers. You have to have that. You have to be strong in that A column for me to be in. I don't care how many titles you have in the B column. It's about major wins. It's about playing big tournaments, open fields against the best players in the world, and you won 3 of them or 5 of them or 7 of them or whatever they are. That you need to have that, right? And there's a lot of players that to me fall short of that. Now, the tricky thing there is that there are players from different eras where that, hierarchy was a little bit different. When you look at someone like a Corey Deuel, who's on this year's ballot, has been on the ballot for a number of years and it gets a fair amount of votes, but hasn't cracked that list. To me, that he's really big in that B side, right? But he was playing in an era where there really weren't that many A tournaments. There was one World Championship, one U.S. Open, and not a lot in between. And so how many opportunities did he have to crack that A category? Nowadays, you've got, the A category to me would include, all of the big
UK
Matchroom
Open,
and Predator
European Open.
events, right? I mean, they're big events with all the best players in the world. So there's a lot of opportunities. The fields are a lot tougher, but so it's.
So would you include like the Predator Arizona Open to the U.S.
No,
Open?
that would be in the B category. But you've got your Predator. You've got the
Predator Las
Vegas
Vegas
Open, the World
be an A, I
Pinball,
would think.
the World
Like a U.S. Open though.
Yeah, that type of thing, right?
I don't know if I could put it in the U.S. Open. U.S. Open's kind of in that World Championship realm to me.
Well, but I mean, I still think you're talking about major
Yeah.
international opens where all the top players were there. It was an open field in the competition.
Yeah, I was going to say that,
and you had to do
tw-
some. I'm not going to fault Klenikachi for winning the 10-ball tournament, because
No, I'm
it's
not saying
the US
that.
Open.
Yeah.
Or even the Las Vegas Open. Every player played in the World 10-ball, played in the Las Vegas Open. It was a 128 plus field of the top players in the world. That's good enough for me. If you won you did pretty good.
I'll say that I'll guarantee you there's more dead weight in the U.S. Open than there is in that Las Vegas Open.
Because you're talking 256.
A lot more.
So, anytime
Sure.
you got a 256 field, you're gonna. But I'm talking about that front 128.
Go check out the Asian Open. Let me know how much.
On the back end, they're picking up players wherever they can for the Predator event. I mean, they're asking everybody and their mother to go and hop on.
But they're still getting. They're still getting a large enough percentage of top players in some of those events to me to make it. Okay, would I give it the same weight as the U.S. Open or the World Championship? No, but I'm not sticking it in with the Arizona Open or big dogs or something like that. That's not going to be the case, right? So that's why I try to have these little things, and it's like it's okay. If you're a great player, you had a bunch of these. If you're a Hall of Fame player, you had a fair number of A's.
The prestige might not be there, but the quality of competition, I would say, is.
Well, and that's why you look at someone like Corey's career and you say he won a lot of PBT tour events, right? Well, back in those days, those were world championships. I mean, as far as caliber of the field goes, that's when Americans still dominated pool in all those fields. Every one of those. That's how Kim Davenport got in. To me, he was won a lot of tournaments and was a great player in an era where every field had Siegel and Varner and Hall and Rempe and Mizarek and Reyes. And, you're talking about every field had 12 Hall of Famers in it. So if you won a number of those events, that's pretty strong. So it's kind of, you have to, it's like all sports, you have to look at different eras with a different eyeglass and kind of weigh them out and see how they fit into your structure. Everybody votes differently, right? Everybody does.
And that's the point,
every
right?
sport. In every sport.
Yeah.
Oh, but at the end of the day, it's more of a numbers game, right? You at the end of the day, like it's easy to reflect, but when we're voting, we're looking at stats, right? We're looking.
But stats, but they're not straight up stats. They're not 500 home runs and 3,000 strikeouts and 300 wins and whatever. They're not these like bars that appear to get you what you need to be. Or in golf, it's automatic. You win a certain number of titles and you're in the Hall of Fame, right? So other sports like this, it's a little bit different, and because the games are different, the eras are different, and the competition is different, it's a little bit trickier to try to figure out how you're going to measure these against each other.
Yeah. So I think I guess you finished. That's kind of how you wrap it up. Okay.
In a nutshell, a really big nutshell, but it's a nutshell.
So we hinted that there was 9 players on the ballot. I think I don't know. I guess should we just go around and say who we voted for, and then we'll kind of go through each player individually and give our reasoning for why, yay or nay, they got a vote?
If you're comfortable with that, I mean, if you're not, then bail. I mean, I
Mike?
certainly understand.
Molina?
I mean, no one's got a gun to their heads. Yeah, you voted
Peace.
for 2.
Well, I mean,
Peace out.
with great power comes great responsibility, right?
I've never been afraid to share an opinion, so I'm not going to start now.
Okay.
I'm not going to start now.
Well, I voted for exactly one person. It was Niels. I will go through the reasoning for that. Molina Mike, what you got? Who'd you vote for?
I voted for Niels, I voted for Corey, and I voted for Jeremy Jones. Were my 3 votes.
Okay.
And
Panozzo?
yeah, go ahead, Mike. No, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, just Niels.
Just voted for Niels?
Yep.
Okay. So you want to just take it straight down the list of the players?
I don't know that I want to say why I didn't vote for somebody. I mean, I talked about Corey because he's a pretty hot topic, a pretty topical discussion for this. There's a lot of players on the list.
Let's run down Corey's resume then, as sure. You say that.
Okay, so let's go down Corey's. I'll read it out. So just straight down the list that we have here: 10-time Mosconi Cup USA member. 2001 Sands Regency 9-Ball Open, BCA 9-Ball Open 2001, 2001 All Japan Men's 9-Ball Championship, 2001 Sudden Death 7-Ball, 2001 US 9-Ball Open Champion, 2003 Atlanta Open, 2004 Sudden Death 7-Ball, 2005 UPA Tour Championship, Pro Tour Championships, Super Billiards Expo, $1 Million Shootout, Turning Stone Classic, U.S. National Snooker Championship, Derby City One Pocket, Derby City Banks. Those are his major accomplishments listed on the ballot that we all got.
So you look at those and you say, okay, how do I stack those up? Okay.
Well, let's start with Molina Mike because he actually voted for him. So Molina Mike, why don't you give us your yes reasoning?
I'll be honest. There's a lot of those tournaments where I don't know the strength of the field. Right, that just wasn't, that's just me being honest about it. But, I look at some of the things that I remember from Corey, along with some of those titles that I do recognize on there, and that for me was enough. I feel like on top of that, and it may not be like written in stone criteria, but Corey changed the game, and in a lot of different ways, and so for me, that's. Those things kind of paired together were, enough for me to say I was surprised to even see his name on there in the sense that he's not already in the Hall of Fame, So, and then you read down that list, it's kind of there's a lot of arguments to be made there on him being allowed in that select group. So,
sure, Mike Panozzo.
Yeah, no, it's a good list. The things that stand out to me are U.S. Open, All Japan, which is a great tournament. It's a great tournament for the Asian players for sure, and the BCA Open. So those to me were legit, A category, but they weren't. I mean, the U.S. Open is his biggest by far. Yeah. The other two are kind of like that. If my A list has a lower level, those are kind of on that.
A minus.
So really strong and really close. And then a ton of that B stuff. I mean, Sudden's that 7-ball. Little invitational thing made for TV, things like that.
It was an ESPN gimmicky thing.
It's like,
it was a way to speed up the game basically and make it more tolerable to ESPN.
So, and some of them were big money and had good players in them, but I'm a stickler for big open fields where you got to go through 10, 12 rounds. So, I don't want 5 wins, races to 7 gets you a World Pool Masters title, and you're going to tell me it's a major.
Oh, wow.
It. So no, it's just
we know Mike's not getting in no Matchroom Hall of Fame. I can tell you that.
So I mean, that's the way I look at things in terms of analyzing careers.
How many players have been in the Mosconi Cup more than Corey Deuel?
Morris, well, Shane Van Boning, Johnny Archer.
If you're going to list it, then you got to give it some kind of weight and credibility.
I do give it weight. Yeah. It's in that number 2 silo there because listen, in a lot of those years, in the early years. There wasn't any points list to get into that Mosconi Cup. It was it was who do we want on our team? Who's good television? Who's who's popular,
Yeah.
who's whatever. I mean, you know, let's be serious. I mean, and not that Corey didn't deserve to be on a lot of those teams, but that's the way it went then. So
I'm just saying, like, if you're gonna list that, then give it the proper respect and weight that I feel like that deserves, for better or worse.
Well, if you don't mind me jumping in here too, certainly early on in Corey's career, they had success. But I mean, do you give him an automatic bid? So let me ask you this, Molina Mike: if Corey Deuel made the U.S. Mosconi Cup team 10 times, but he won once, is that a net positive or a net negative for you?
Well, when you say it like that, I mean,
Well, I mean, that proves that it's a team game. One, you can't hang that on no matter what. And two, if you went by wins and losses, Neil's been in 14 Mosconi Cups. He got his brains beat in for the first 8.
I mean, he was still there 10 times, though. 10 times.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Well, does that say something about his career? Does that say about who else
says that
during that time?
To me, it says that for 10 years, he was one of the top 5 players in the U.S. Okay? I've never said
for a decade, for 10 years, a top 5 player. That doesn't get you Hall of Fame?
I've never said that Corey Deuel isn't a great player. I'm just saying that to me, on those teams, he was, and most of those teams, he was number 5. You know who's been on a bunch of teams as the number 5 player? Nick Vandenberg. You can talk about him for the Hall of Fame because he's been in a bunch of Mosconi Cups.
How many are we talking about? How many are we talking about? How many Mosconi Cups are we talking about?
Probably 7, I would think.
Well, I mean, I think, listen, we talk about numbers, right, in other sports, right? That could be a number. 10-time Mosconi Cup player. I'm not,
I don't put the value on Mosconi Cup that everybody else puts the value on, because it's not a global event. It's handpicked.
What does everybody want to be on, Mike? What do all American and European players strive to be on?
It makes the Mosconi Cup the best event in pool. No doubt about it. Doesn't make you a Hall of Famer, to me. I mean, again, it's just this is what's great about arguments about Hall of Fames and players and careers and who's better than who. This is, everybody's got their different. They wear different glasses looking at it.
Don't kick me out, Mike. I barely got in the door.
I never kick you out. They're gonna kick me out before they kick you out.
Well, I think it's an interesting conversation, but you have to assume. So, I mean, we'll get to this. I'm sure we'll talk about Jeremy Jones, and I love Jeremy Jones, but as his playing career, is he worthy? I don't think that his playing career, strictly as a playing career, is worthy. So if you want to put him in for everything, well, then you have to start looking at all that he does individually. And being a Mosconi Cup captain, you could make a very serious argument that should count towards his resume. But that doesn't guarantee that it counts towards his resume in a positive way. I mean, if you look at Jeremy Jones, some of the decisions that he's made in the last 3 years, I mean, I don't know that you could say that they've been exactly positive. So, I mean, throwing Earl out there as many times as he did on day 3, that was a blunder. I mean, I think that was a big reason why it cost us.
Yeah, but you think Earl being out there in the first place was something that he was all in on?
The Bucks got to stop somewhere, right? I mean,
but you can only play the hand you're dealt.
Well, or you can say, all right, well, if you're going to pick my team, then it's not my team, and I'll let you pick somebody who's, I'll let you allow somebody somebody else to run this if it's going to be your team. I mean, if Bill Belichick's a bad example because he's the GM too. If Sean Payton is out there and somebody gives him a quarterback, and I mean that's the quarterback that he has to go out there and run. I mean he can resign as coach if he wants, if he doesn't like who he's getting. But the general manager decides who's going to be out there. But if you're gonna look at Corey Deuel as being on there 10 times, you got to look at the positives and negatives to find out whether it's
Mike's head's about to explode over there. Mike looks like he's just ready to go off.
No, well, I'm just wondering whether Nate's saying that Jeremy had no choice in taking Earl Strickland.
I don't know.
No,
well, that's what
that was all his. That was all his decision.
That's what I thought.
I'm not a buyer on that. I don't think it was all his. I don't say all his.
I'm not the one who said that. Molina Mike was the one who hinted.
I'll say it. Yeah. I don't think it was all his.
But regardless,
but he was one who chose
Jeremy Jones.
to put him out there.
I think Jeremy Jones gets definitely is worthy of consideration in years coming up as a meritorious service if you look at all the things he's done in the
and
sport
that's a different discussion for me.
to help to promote the sport, to help to draw viewers, to help to engage fans, things like that. That's that's a
He's
that's
that
a
bridge.
conversation worth having. But as a greatest player category, aside from US Open, two pretty significant wins, there's not a lot there. So to me, no, and as a greatest player, you wouldn't. And what people also need to understand is that they're not nominated for the Hall of Fame. There's a certain criteria where if you meet it, you get added to the list, right? If you're over 40, you've played for more than 10 years, and have won the current, rules say if you won a significant international title as recognized by the BCA, you're eligible. So, that's something that we as a media group have started talking about. Do we need to tighten that up and make it a little bit, more stringent to get on it? Should it be multiple, significant titles? Should it be, if you don't get more than 2% of the votes over 5 years, should you be dropped from the ballot? Things like that. So there are different ways you make the ballot a little bit tighter, but tight or not, if someone doesn't have the credentials, they can be on the ballot for a long time and they're just not going to get in because they're not going to get the support from voters.
Sure. But I guess my ultimate point with that is if you're going to look at Corey Deuel's contributions to the Mosconi Cup, you have to look at the good and the bad. And he's been on the rough side of a lot of those Mosconi Cups. And he's, was it always his fault? Of course not. But it's a team event, and
especially as of late. I mean, I can't argue that. Corey's had some rough.
Well, and as of late, yes, and but again, like I said, with someone like Niels and Ralph's okay, and guys like they were on a ton of Mosconi Cup years in those Mosconi Cups in the years that the USA was still drilling them every year. So should that have been counted against their career? No, they're both Hall of Famers, flat out.
Yeah, no. See, I wouldn't weight it like that. It's just that being there.
If you're looking for something tip scales. If it's really, really close, you're looking for something to tip scales. Yeah, then I look at that silo of events too, and just say, okay, how is this more impressive than most players? And that might help tip the scales for sure.
And that's where I absolutely agree. So my criteria in the beginning was I want to see 3 major titles, and I look at Corey's, and I see one for sure, which is the U.S. Open. The BCA is, you said it was kind of an A- for you, Mike. I think it's more like a B+. It's a really, really nice win, and the All Japan is like a B+ type of thing. So you have borderline 3, but your absolute number 1 was the U.S. Open, and that was the soft break year. And people will say he deserves it because he changed the game. Well, I could also say he doesn't deserve it because he forced the game to change, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be a positive. And in my mind, that's more of a negative. I mean, and I've seen this happen where he's played.
If you're going to do that, then you're gonna exclude like 90% of players. Then, I mean, like
who was a rack mechanic? Who was?
But there's
across the board.
I mean, there's difference. I mean, Corey took it to a whole other level. I mean, I've seen him play in the Midwest at a lot of tournaments. I watched him play at Beloit at the Carom Room for the Spring Classic, where he was racking up bar table 8 ball, and he was literally banking the far left ball and making the rack open up 1 to 2 inches each ball, making that ball as a bank shot, and then playing safety racks and just absolutely torturing his opponents in these 20-minute long games.
Was it Jason Platt?
Everyone. He did it to everybody. It wasn't one player. I mean, he was doing it to the entire tournament. He was having 4-hour matches regularly. Like you talk about he made Jonathan Hennessy look like Speedy Gonzalez with some of the matches that he was playing, because every single game that he broke the balls on would literally be a safety break where he starts with control on the rack. I mean, he was a tournament director's nightmare for a 2-year stretch until basically the tournament director said, you can play in our tournaments, but if you do this, you're out. I mean, he not only had to change the soft break, he had to change the way tournament directors ran their tournaments, because he was literally slowing down tournaments so much that it was taking 2-day events and making them into like 3-day events. I mean, stuff like that. I mean, there's a difference between playing in the gray area, and there's a difference between just being a straight asshole to everybody in the entire field. And he's got his length of like the tournament I'm talking about in Beloit. He lost his second match, I believe, to Sky Woodward, and goes on to I think take 3rd place in a 128-person field all the way through the B side. The tournament finished on Monday night. It was supposed to finish like Sunday afternoon. I mean, that's the kind of things that he did to tournament directors. I mean, he'll take them, and he'll be 5 matches behind on the B side. I mean, there's a difference between changing the rules and just like being a bit of an asshole with the rules, right?
Well, he was trying to outsmart everyone,
And he was
Within the rules.
but
Yeah.
within the rules, absolutely. And I absolutely agree that what he did was absolutely legal. There was nothing wrong with it, but that doesn't make it an automatic positive, right? And you don't have to look at everybody doesn't have to look at what he did and say, "Oh, this was awesome. He changed the game. What an innovator. What a genius." Right? You can look at it and say, like, "You're kind of a dick," right? I mean,
let me message Corey and see if he's got a few minutes to spare.
Maybe we can get him on the show.
well,
Yeah.
I mean,
I get the premise. No, for sure. I understand what you're saying. I mean,
ask
but
Mika what he thought about it.
ask who?
Mika.
Oh, well.
we don't want to go. We don't want to go there.
And ask some tournament directors.
Yeah, but Corey's creativity was also a plus on other aspects of the game.
He was
Sure. Yeah.
an incredible player to watch at times, for sure.
Right.
He would just do stuff that would just, you're just like, whoa, that's just
Yeah.
nuts. But there's a lot of that with a lot of players. But again, you sit down and you go, okay, is this one of the greatest players to ever pick up a cue and go play, measured against the other ones who are in there as the greatest players who ever picked up the cue and went and play? If you're sitting at the same table with Mosconi and Greenleaf and Siegel and Varner and Buddy Hall, how do you stack up? And there's always going to be the top and the bottom of even a Hall of Fame list, right? But you kind of look at it that way too sometimes. Just think, okay, in the grand scheme of the game of pool, is this person's legacy that kind of legacy?
If you just look at his resume, it is very borderline to me. In fact, I might even give him the nod. Probably, actually, ironically, with the Mosconi Cup bids, I would probably give him the nod. But that is giving him full weight for that U.S. Open, the soft break U.S. Open year, and I just, without another absolute world-class quality win, world championship, U.S. Open type of thing, I got to put a little bit of an asterisk on that U.S. Open. And because of that asterisk on the U.S. Open, it's just a little under for me. But I do think he's very, very close. He's the next person that I would probably put in on that list.
And by the way, we're just 3 out of like 60 people that voted. So
yeah, of course, right.
Right.
We're just the ones that are dumb enough to talk about it.
60 votes, it's gonna, the voices are gonna be heard, right? So, yeah.
But I think it's interesting to have this conversation because, I mean,
yeah, no, absolutely.
Why not, right? And we're just the ones that are dumb enough to say
it's fun to hear you go
right?
off on Corey.
Yeah.
Oh, wait till
if nothing else, that part was well worth it.
Just wait till we get to John Schmidt. It'll get even better.
Yeah. Let's go. Speaking of,
do we want to go JJ next, or we want to go John Schmidt next?
I'm down with whatever.
Well,
yeah, I think I've already thought I've given my opinions on JJ, but
I think JJ's. Yeah, I echo every single thing that you said about JJ.
What are y'all's opinion on John Schmidt being a Hall of Famer? He's got a U.S. Open that I remember. What else is on that resume?
Well, the big thing is 626, right? It's the U.S. Open is 626. I mean, that's it. He has a couple other like nice wins. Nothing else that's. I mean, there's certainly no other top tier ones.
Mike,
did he win the World Straight Pool Championship? No, when he won, it was not World. Right?
He won the World Tournament of 14.1.
Yeah, won the World Tournament 14.1, which
Super Billiards Expo.
See, as an entire career, it's not close to me. So U.S. Open's a U.S. Open. I mean, Tommy Kennedy won the U.S. Open. Gabe Owen won the U.S. Open. So
I mean, here's this list if you don't mind. This is a list that we have on here: the 2006 U.S. Open 9-ball championship, 2009 Derby City 1 Pocket, 2009 Super Billiards Expo, 2012 Maryland 14.1, and the 2012 World Tournament of 14.1, and then 626, which is. So I mean, that's the list for his accomplishments.
No, to me, it's not in the 626. I don't even include. I mean, to me, that would be kind of those if someone was really borderline.
What do you mean don't include it?
It's
What?
not. It's not.
How do
It
you not
wasn't.
include
It
this?
wasn't even competition. It wasn't even
Okay, he's done
competition,
something that
guys.
2 other people on Earth in the
It's a
history of
Guinness.
pool
It was a
have
Guinness
done.
World. It was a Guinness World Record, and God bless him for doing it. But
it's still a 50 long record.
It wasn't competition. It wasn't a title. It wasn't anything. It was.
Correct.
I'm going to do this until I die.
Okay,
That was like the one number that the sport has, Mike.
No
one number that the sport has.
Listen,
the only one.
When he did it, the first thing I did was hunt down the sports editor for the New York Times and said this was like 714. This was like Babe Ruth's home run record. Okay,
that's exactly
as far as pool goes, and that was and it deserved all the press it got, and he deserved all the accolades he got. To me, that doesn't get you into Hall of Fame. It's
part of the resume, right? It's part of the resume.
Sure, it's part of the resume. And if it was really close and my finger was on the scale, that might do it. But I'm not even in the zip code.
I would put that even above for me personally, I put it above a category A tournament. Because it is the closest thing that we have to 714. It's the closest thing that we have to 62, right? The 62 is like the home runs for the Yankees. Well, now, but yeah, 61.
How the hell do you not give that any kind of weight? That's an automatic stamp them in, ship it.
But with that being said,
because it's just a different way of looking at the Hall of Fame.
I guess I could. Well, I could go off here. Mike, have you seen that video from start to finish?
Me?
Yes.
Molina Mike. Yeah, Molina Mike.
Oh no, I haven't. No.
Have you seen any part of it? More than 2 minutes.
I can't recall off the top of my head, to be honest.
Okay. We'll ask a neutral person here. Panozzo, do you think that you could? Do you think that? Okay, so
John's gonna go fucking off when he sees this. I guarantee it.
I don't care.
Guaranteed.
Honestly, I don't care.
Yeah.
Do you think that there are 10 people in the world that follow the sport of pool more than Molina Mike and I?
Yeah, I think
probably, but yeah, I get your point. Go ahead.
To find 10 people that follow.
Yeah, no, you guys are dialed in 100%.
We follow pretty closely.
Yeah.
To have let's just say 2 of the top 20 people in the world that follow the sport closer than anybody else, and I've never had an opportunity to see it. And I know that he said all you got to do is just come to one of the showings. Well, the last showing that I saw was in like 2020, and he basically goes around, grills up some steaks. Does a private showing, makes some jokes, shows the video,
they were giving
and
steaks?
has a good time.
Well, I for sure would have gone then.
I'm
if I would have
in.
known that.
Right.
Sign me up, son. I didn't see that on the flyer.
Okay. I mean,
look, we had Shane on earlier talk about the financials and the tough part of the game and all this. I'm not going to blame John for being a little nitty when it comes to trying to protect what was his. I'm not going to hate. I'm not going to hate on.
I think it backfired on him, but I'm not going to.
100% it backfired. And John knows as much because I've had conversations with him off camera where John will admit that but like either way, that what he did put pool on the map for however much of a small blip it may be in the grand scheme of things.
It was huge.
John made straight pool relevant again. John built pool back on the mainstream map again. John, what John did was remarkable and completely unique. And for that alone, I'd give John. But to be fair, I didn't vote for him, but I should have in hindsight. That's what I would say. So
I would say that he took an opportunity to do exactly what you just said and squandered it by taking his ball and going home and trying to profit off of it. I don't think that, like Mike, you said it was what was your words with Jason breaking it? You said it was a blow up in hindsight or something like that.
No, I said his treating it as keeping it to himself was in hindsight probably he regrets that, right? It blew up in his face, yeah, for sure. Yeah, but I'm not discounting. I'm not saying that he shouldn't have done that. I mean, I don't blame him for trying to profit off it at all.
I don't either.
I think,
but I do
wrong, but
I do blame him for it if he's going to do what he did and not give people an opportunity to see it. I mean, if you're going to do that, you got to go out. You've got to go out and you got to give people the opportunity. I bet he did less than 15 showings.
Well,
and each showing had maybe
we're getting
20,
off
30,
we're getting
40
off
people.
topic. We're getting off topic here because it's
Well, this
still
is my
whether
topic.
whether he sold it for
Oh.
$6 zillion or didn't sell it for a dime doesn't change whether or not one of us thinks that that this is a Hall of Fame performance, and one of us thinks that it's not. That's the thing. I mean, I don't care whether he made any money off it or not, and
Yeah.
whether he went around the wrong way. It's
He may be the bonehead for that decision, but
I
it's
think that accomplishment
Well,
is something that I'm
I'm
putting
not.
on my list of competitive things to determine whether a guy gets in the Hall of Fame.
But I already said I think it's even better than an A quality. I think that is a more impressive achievement than let's say a tier A. I think it's more impressive than a U.S.
Then
Open.
I would
But-
put him in for meritorious service.
Potentially. But what I'm saying is while the accomplishment is absolutely there and it's absolutely worthy, the way that you handled it I'm taking that into account as well. And if you're going to do something incredible, but you're going to tell every single person that they can't watch it unless you give them $80 and sit down for 6 hours with him to do it, and then you don't give people that opportunity, I can't use that as a positive for you.
Do you accept Jason's high run?
What do you mean by accept?
Do you give it credence, credibility? Is it real?
Absolutely.
Okay. So then John Schmidt should be in for this when someone put his mind to it and broke it a year later.
But the accomplishment is not what I'm talking about. The way that he handled the accomplishment is what I have a problem with.
Well, yeah, but now Mike's not. But now Mike is watering down the accomplishment. Was what he's saying, though.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that doesn't change the fact that it was in place for 60 years or whatever it was. I mean, the accomplishment is the accomplishment.
One spent 3 months, 8 hours a day trying to beat it. That's why it lasted 50 years. Straight pool tournaments went away,
sure.
And nobody devoted their life to trying to break the record. That's
sure.
why I said this isn't competition. Who did he beat? Who was the loser in that match? Who was it? Just I don't get how this gets viewed as a competitive notch in your belt. I just don't get it.
I think
even guys like
still the accomplishment.
No, because you'll still see guys that'll say that what they did was remarkable. Great players will still give them credit and respect because how difficult it is to have everything come together and then still be able to execute it.
I did a whole feature story on how amazing the accomplishment was and how much I admired his dedication to doing that. Because I did. I thought that, he was so focused on doing this because it meant so much to him. And he was a historian. I loved everything about it. But that's a completely different story.
Okay. So if let's say you knew Jason trained for 10 hours a day for, 60 days leading up to, let's say, the world championship, but still came up short. Well, everybody else has won a world championship. I mean, how is it that you can say because he finally put his mind to something that now and accomplished it that it doesn't mean anything for John?
Well, no, you're talking about two different things. If you're talking about Jason playing in the world championship, you're talking about an open competition that I value the results of. Okay, this wasn't an open competition. This was me in a closed room with a table and no competition, and I did this amazing feat. But don't stack that up against Shane winning 5 U.S. Opens or Mike Siegel winning 4 World Straight Pool Championships or something like that. Don't tell me that they're in the same discussion. I don't understand how that.
Well, Shane's not in the Hall of Fame yet, Mike. So relax on the Shane argument right now. All right, you got another year before you can get.
We'll have you on next year. You can tell us how.
Then I'll say you're right, Mike.
Then you can say why
I got to hear
avoiding
voiding out that argument for right now. Okay, we don't got to hear that. But you will be right in the year.
So yeah, it's just.
I think it's
apples and oranges. It's apples and oranges, and you guys are putting all the fruit in the same basket.
I'm not. I'm saying that it's different than what those. I think it's different than a tournament win, but I still think it's incredibly impressive, and I think that it deserves an absolute nod when it comes to his playing career. But that is only if. I mean, it's like if Steph Curry hits 43s in the next game, but they don't televise it, and then that the record of all of that stuff happening just goes away, and you can never actually see it. You just have to take their word.
Nobody's seen what is it? Wilt's 100-point game, right?
Is there? Well, that's because TV didn't exist in the 1960s, right? It doesn't.
Well,
I watched
Pool is
TV in the
still in the-
1960s, dude.
I'm kidding.
Mike is getting real offended over here right now.
But is there actually a video? Is there actually like a video of that?
I don't think
No,
no.
there was
isn't?
no footage of that. But anyways,
Sure.
All right,
Yeah,
let's move on. We can
yeah,
agree to
let's
this.
move on.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I guess that's kind of the list of the in my mind the questionable people, or at least the close people. Was there anybody else that either of you looked at that you could have potentially given a nod to, but they just came up a little shorter?
Yeah, Vivian.
Vivian's, yeah, she's definitely worth discussion. Has been. I've looked at her stuff again over and over every year because
I was
one
being
year,
sarcastic.
no,
Completely
one year,
Well,
she's got some pretty good, really good resume. She's
short
persona non
short of
grata
Jeanette
right
Lee,
now.
Short of Jeanette Lee, she may be the greatest women's pool player ever.
Who?
Vivian.
Next to Jeanette Lee.
I said besides Jeanette Lee.
Is the greatest pool player ever, women.
U.S. women player.
Oh, U.S. women. Not Jean Belucas.
Well,
hands down.
Probably. Okay, so
Dorothy Wise, right up there.
This should have just been a show of just Mike telling us why.
Right. I mean, you can make an argument.
I love
you can make an argument that she's
throwing
top
stuff
five.
at me and make me think of this stuff because I take it seriously and I can have my mind changed, but I don't think
Jean was before my time, so
Oh, yeah. No,
there's a pretty real argument. There's a pretty real argument that you could say that Vivian Villarreal is one of the greatest women players in U.S. history. Women U.S. players.
I'd never vote for her ever.
Yeah, Robin Bell, ever. Lori John. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about she's not. Is she in the top five? No.
Yeah. So
she's in the top five.
I like how he says that. And he goes.
No, I'm trying to think of someone I missed. I mean, you got your Lori John, your Ava, not Ava, but Lori John, Robin Bell, Jean Belucas, Dorothy Wise, it's Jeanette. So yeah, I'm thinking not top five.
Okay. She was, she
was a great player during that era when it was all the top. I mean, you talk about the heyday of the men's, the heyday of the women's. I mean, she was right in the heart of that with Jeanette and Lori John and Robin and Ava and Allison dropping in and all that stuff. She was in the heart of that, and she held her herself up pretty well. I just don't think when I look at her resume that it's again. She's to me the perfect example on the women's side of a great player that to me personally isn't Hall of Fame.
Are we giving any weight to one pocket players, by the way, at all?
Not, it's a really good question because Shannon Dalton's been on the list for a number of years, and Shannon won a couple of 9-ball tournaments as well, decent size, and played in some Moscone Cups, represent the U.S. But the majority of his prowess as a one pocket player, and I just don't think that people who vote have enough history with one pocket or knowledge one pocket or the one.
But
pocket.
Is that fair? Because if you're going to give weight to other things like straight pool,
well, there's not a lot of people give a lot of weight to straight pool anymore.
I would think about
was pool in the 60s.
I'm just thinking about
80s.
Tony. Tony's now a Derby City one pocket champion, 2 times Buffalo champion, which you could argue is probably the one pocket world championship.
Right.
Won a lot of other big one pocket titles. I think Tony's now about 40.
I think that the knock on a lot of the one pocket, especially the older one pocket players, is that it was a very small club. They were the greatest one pocket players, but they would have a tournament and Grady would have a tournament or one thing or another, and there'd be 16 players. Okay. 16 really great one pocket players, but it's a 16-player tournament. The rest of the best cueists in the world, who were Americans at the time, didn't play. So to me, that
it's not the 9-ball Hall of Fame either, Mike. I mean,
no, it's not. But it's become a little more lean toward it. It used to be the straight ball Hall of Fame. Now it's more of a 9. But you're going where all the biggest, best competition is, right? And it wasn't in one pocket tournaments. So I think that's the way a lot of people look at it as, and there's a one pocket Hall of Fame. God bless you. Get in there like right now. You deserve it. BCA Hall of Fame, greatest pocket billiard players of all time. That to me is a categorically different.
Yeah, I agree with Mike. I think if you're going to be in one of these,
well, no, you're not going to convince this guy right here.
Well,
you're not going to convince. It's never going to happen.
I think that if you're going to be in that category, if you're going to make it for whatever kind of niche game, and that's what one pocket is, it's kind of a niche pool game. If you're going to be in the Hall of Fame based off of your performance in that niche, if it's basically only that, you better dominate your competition like nobody's ever dominated that niche before. John Brumback would be a lot closer to a Hall of Famer for me than Tony Chohan. Tony Chohan, nobody's ever even looked at Tony Chohan and said he's anywhere close to being the best one pocket player in the world during his entire career, ever. That's never happened. I mean, John Brumback was considered the best banker of the balls for 10, 15, 20 years. And he still might be today if it wasn't for Billy, right? John Brumback dominated his niche more so than Tony's ever dominated his. And this paints. I love Tony. I think Tony's a phenomenal player. I wish he played more 9-ball because I think he'd get more nods for this discussion if he did, in my book. But you got to just dominate your little niche to a
Tony
degree.
Went on some runs, winning tournaments in the last few years, and played everybody and anyone, and just tournaments by himself. Tony's been doing really well. I mean, has done well.
Sure.
Yeah.
But he's not. Yeah. But he's you would agree with this. He's never been the best one pocket player in the world, ever, for a second.
Yeah, but okay.
He might not have been top 5 because you're never going to take him before Dennis. You're never going to take him before Alex. I don't know that you could take him over Shane.
I just mean in the grand scheme, if you're going to include other games, then have it be across the board.
I agree to a certain extent, and I think that maybe one day one pocket gets there. To me, it's still a niche game, and the difference to me is that you look at these other guys who are in the Hall of Fame, Niels or Ralph, players like that. They won World 8-ball title, won World 9-ball title, but those fields were those were the same big international best players in the world.
Right, and I guess that's where it's different because you have great rotation players that play that game well. So I understand that side.
So but it's just a broader. Those are broader tournaments, broader fields. The best players around the world all playing the same game. If one pocket gets to that point, then I think you absolutely, because it's not exclusive to rotation. We've had 14-1, players who won World 8-ball titles, things like that. So it's not a rotation Hall of Fame. Don't get that misconception.
I'm just saying, don't put your nose at the air at one pocket is all I'm saying. All right.
I would never do that, but there's a one pocket Hall of Fame. And at this point in time,
and you know why they did that? Probably because y'all had your nose in the air about one pocket. Okay.
It's not a nose in the air. It's strictly a matter of size and scope.
Well,
and so
we're gonna have some fun with these conversations throughout the year, and come voting time. I feel like, because this is all new to me, and I like stirring shit up. So we're gonna have a good time with it.
Yeah, we will.
I agree. Yeah. I will backtrack a little bit. I think Tony is definitely a top 3 one pocket tournament player. But as far as just on the table, you're never going to take him in a gambling match over Alex or over Dennis or over Shane.
Still top 3 on Earth for a long period of time. Not you're talking about top 3 in the world for an extended period of time. Nobody want to F with him playing one pocket. And I'm talking about you can list world champion after world champion after world champion that would want no part of messing with that guy, and it's for a long period of time.
Who's that?
Sure.
Tony.
Oh.
Yeah. He's borderline top 3. I'm not giving you top 3. I'm giving you borderline top 3. Because he was never Alex. He was never Alex. He was
Tony's
never
for
Dennis.
Sure top 3. Tell him Tony's top 3, baby. Tony's for sure top 3.
She's not buying your action, buddy.
Right now, or are you talking about historically?
No, I'm just saying Tony was. Oh, right now, I don't know. I have to think about it. We have to redo the list, but Tony was for sure a top 3. you can't have Dennis in the top 3 because Dennis ain't played one pocket in 4 years. Okay, so that you can't have. I don't want to hear that conversation at all. But yeah, Tony was at a minimum top 3 for well over 10 years.
Well, if you remove Alex playing Tony, when has Alex played in the last 5 years? Nobody will play him, right? Who's going to play Dennis besides Alex? No one will play him. So you can't use that as nobody would play Dennis. Dennis got to the point where no one would play him.
We're talking about who's going to play who. You know, the Hall of Fame's about competitors, winning tournaments, winning titles. I don't care who matched up against who. No one wanted a part of Tony. That doesn't get you in a Hall of Fame. Nobody ever beat this guy gambling. I don't care about that. You know, that those are not things to me. You know, then let's go.
But now Tony's got titles now. You know, you just read off somebody's bank pool derby thing, so you ought to have Tony's one pocket titles on his resume.
Sure.
You know, I honestly do agree with Mike. I think that Tony should get a nod. I think he should be on the ballot, but I also think that John Brumback should be on it, just for the way that because. I believe that John Brumback dominated bank pool over the years like no player has dominated anything.
Give me his list of bank pool titles from 20 years ago.
Look, let us do some research, Mike.
Every
barely got in the club. We're
talking about 12 people from Ohio and Indiana and Kentucky playing one pocket.
I'm not saying I'm letting him in, but I think
you can't put that in the same on the same list with the other events that you're trying to measure against. When we include on people's resume that they won Derby City one pocket, it's just because Derby City's included, and so you talk about
something like.
But I don't put a lot of weight in those anyway, so it doesn't make any difference.
But I think
if somebody swept Derby City, that would be something that's just instant for me, done deal, like what Federer almost did.
My point only, Mike, is that if you're going to get some nods for
instantly, Mike, instant Hall of Fame. You know?
If you're going to get a nod for
the best amongst the best, Mike, the best amongst the best.
Mike, tell me, we're revoking
and just to be
330.
No, I know, but just to be clear, Mike doesn't have Fran in the Hall of Fame yet. So just for full disclosure, Mike does not have FSR in the Hall of Fame yet. So just so that way the viewers know.
Which I mean, we talked about this a little bit before. I think that is absolutely nuts. If he retired tomorrow, he would be a Hall of Famer. No doubt in my mind.
We're gonna make Mike's head explode. All right, this has been a good show, boys.
Serenity now.
Yeah. All right. I think it was a pretty good first. I need to do some homework because Mike knows too much shit, and I don't know enough shit to really to really stand up to him like I want to. So
man,
I need to do a little bit more.
Next time
research.
we do this, Mike's gonna be sitting there with a pile of paper on his desk.
I'm gonna be ready.
Premier League pool. Premier League pool, World 9-Ball champion, Billiard Digest Player of the Year, 5-time Euro Tour Open, World 8-Ball champion, U.S. Open champion, PRP 9-Ball Open.
In the modern era, where it's so tough.
Derby City 9-Ball champion. And you don't have, I mean, that's 5 A category wins. And you don't have that as a Hall of Fame.
I haven't said that. I said right now.
No. Wait a minute! Don't hit the reverse button now. Let me cue up the videotape because Mike clearly said. Mike has said definitively.
I would not put someone in a Hall of Fame based on 1 year. Period. I don't care what kind of year it was. I would not put someone in the Hall of Fame based on 1 year.
He almost swept the World Championships that
year.
Yeah,
no, that, yeah. If he'd have won the third World Championship, I might have been convinced. But he only finished.
That would have been the one. That would have been the one to tip the scales, right? That would have been the one to tip the scales.
It's just fundamentally, I have a problem with a 1 year career. And I could, next time we talk, I will have a list of baseball, football, and basketball players who had otherworldly single years and were never heard from again, and tell me whether or not
but this is different. This is different. You can only do so much in a team event, right? I mean, find me a tennis player. Find me a tennis player who won 5. I mean, there aren't
won
5
the Grand Slam in 1 year and then never won another event.
Yeah,
Okay.
If you could win 4 events and you're not a Hall of Famer, I will bow down to you. But he's a
Ooh, this
4-time
is gonna be fun.
he's a
I'm gonna
3-time world
scavenger hunt.
champion. He's a 3-time world champion, and he's won a U.S. Open, and he's been the Billiard Digest Player of the Year, and he's won a Premier League pool, and a 9-ball Open,
Change the
and a
game.
Derby City 9-ball.
Change the game.
Change the game again? How many people changed the freaking game in this
A
sport?
lot. It's happening, Mike. It's happening. It's called evolution, Mike. All right.
Okay, what do you guys think out there in the comments? Do you
I
think?
do. Well, I do like that Ed noticed that my little like substitute light over here went dark. So it's like, yeah, Ed, they're throwing shade on me is what's happening.
Let's hear it out in the comments. Do you
Yeah.
think FSR is a Hall of Famer right now? Let's hear it from the people.
I'll pose the question of
Well,
windows open.
thankfully they all went to
We'll
sleep
see.
in the last hour and 15 minutes, so we're not going to get a lot of response.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway,
I don't know. Are we good then? Oh, should we
Yeah,
talk?
we're good.
Should we talk a little bit about next year, or do we not want to
No.
take that?
no, next
Well-
year's done.
We'll do it. We'll do
Next
it on the
year's
show. Yeah.
Carlo Beato, Guy Young Kim. Sorry, you're gonna have to wait.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
Nothing wrong with that.
Mike's such a homer, man. I swear. Wait till I get. Let me get some Filipino voters on this team, and we'll have to pump up these numbers. That's what we need.
Yeah. All right,
right,
good
boys.
stuff, though, guys. Thanks for entertaining me. It was it was a
Yeah,
lot of
it
fun.
was fun. All right,
Bye.
thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll catch you next week.